Hello and welcome to Gary's Garage. Today we're working on our Touareg, our 2014 Touareg with the TDI engine, and we're doing a basic maintenance. It's time. It's been, well, 1 year and I think 4 days since the last oil change, and we've traveled about, I think it's 7,000 kilometers, which is about 4,000 miles. So definitely shorter than necessarily on the distance, but once you get to every year, it's time to do that. So I've just finished warming the engine up because we want the engine oil. I'm going to give it now a couple of minutes for any of the oil that will run down the oil galleries into the oil pan to do so that when we do drain it, we get all the oil out. So it's a pretty simple job, but I thought I'd do this for those that are watch the channel, interested in Touaregs. There's a few things specific. Some people may already know this, but there's a few things that are specific to these types of cars with this type of filter. We need 8 liters of the correct Volkswagen rated engine oil, which in this case, let me just grab a bottle, and what we've got is the Castrol Edge, and the most important part of this, it is a 530, which is what everyone's gone to, but the most important part of this is right here where it says Volkswagen 50400 and 50700, which is the specification of oil needed for the TDI engine. And there are 8 quarts, not liters. There are 8 quarts is required, 946 milliliters, and this is essentially what Volkswagen puts in their bottles. So this is the correct oil. I have 8 of these, and I have a filter, and the filter is this is a Napa filter. Napa just buys these from European manufacturers. This is a cartridge type filter. Comes with the little O-ring already installed, which is the drain, as well as the big O-ring for the housing. So we're ready to go with that. So let's get started. So anytime you're going to do some maintenance to your car, you have to realize you're taking on the role of the mechanic shop or service shop that would normally do this. And part of that is a visual inspection. So you want to take the time when you're looking to do stuff. So I'm going to remove the cover. I'm going to take a peek inside the air filter. I know the interval is good. You may notice that my memory isn't all that good. I do work a lot of cars, so I use these little pieces of tape to tell me when I've done the last service and what the mileage was at the time that we did it. And you'll notice that I've also tagged here that I also did the fuel filter at the same time. And if you look up at the fuel filter, I've put on a piece of tape that indicates the mileage that I've changed the fuel filter. Fuel filters need to be replaced every 30,000 kilometers, which is every 20,000 miles. This is the one thing you do not want to miss. Leaving this could cause you problems with your injectors, which becomes a very expensive fix. So part of the inspection is we're going to be looking at the charge pipes, looking to see if there's any leaking, looking for any coolant, anything that's damaged or out of the way. We'll be checking the fluid levels, obviously the coolant, the power steering fluid, seeing what level that is. And now that's cold, and it's at the cold level, so that's at the minimum. That's not too bad. That's another item that's on the list this year for service, is to have the power steering fluid replaced. So I'm not going to worry about that if it's just a tad low. Coolant looks nice and clean. You can see the Volkswagen pink color. I'm going to leave it closed because I've warmed the car up. It's not hot, but I have warmed the car up. So, because you do want it warm when you change the fluid. So there's the initial top side. So I'm just going to put the camera on the tripod here. All right, well, let's start. First thing to do is this little coolant pipe here. You just want to lift it out of the way. Pull up on the cover, straight up. There's 4 rubber mounts here, which go onto these posts around the car. So this gives us an opportunity now with the cover off to do a little inspection to see if everything is, how everything looks. Because this car's been under my supervision since new, there's nothing out of place. When the cover gets on, the car is treated with respect. So I can see that everything is as I left it. It's all in good order, and nothing is failing. Turbo's a little warm. There's a little bit of heat back here. Looking around at the valve cover gaskets and stuff, I can see that there's no leaking. I do see a little bit of leaking, and this is the intake to the turbo inlet, and there's a little bit of so we may have the beginning, and I think right close by is a crankcase ventilation port. So we may have the beginning of a little bit of oil bypass, just depositing and then getting onto this, or we may have a case of the seal in the turbo. Usually this is under vacuum, so we don't see this. So I will investigate that sort of later on. This is actually the very first sign of anything happening with this car. But I know that turbos only last a certain amount of time, typically 150,000 kilometers or 100,000 miles. This one is 120,000 kilometers, so it's not too far off needing to be removed and serviced. So, and that you can let it go. Just it may be leaking oil and it may not perform at its best. But I will probably have it serviced before, whenever I see that it's needed. I'll check the bearings on that later this year. So there we go. So here, going back to the oil filter, so here is the oil filter housing. And one of the things when you're doing the oil change on this car is you want to drain the oil out of the filter first, because that will, this is with the filter on top of the engine and this cartridge type. There's a little seal on the bottom. When you pull the filter out, it allows the oil that's in the housing to drain into the crankcase. And we want to do that before we drain the oil out of the crankcase, because that allows us to get all that dirty oil out of the engine. So that is the first job we want to do. So let's get ready to get that done. This is a 32 millimeter socket. It seems like overkill for a plastic housing, but I don't like marring up the nut. And it doesn't take a lot of torque, but it does take just a little bit. And if you've got a good surface to grab it with, then you can take it off without marring it. Now I've got the rag in place to try and minimize any spillage that would dirty up the engine compartment. So take that off. And I have a container standing by which I keep my used oil filters in. And so that container I will then take to the recycling center. So there we go. So as we've pulled this out, and as normal for diesel engines, it's quite black. There we go. So what we're going to want to do here is the cover, which has the oil seal on it. You want to just make sure you're not making a mess. So a rag is a great thing to start with the cleanup. And then just a small screwdriver to get under the O-ring, and you can easily remove the O-ring. you're going to get oil on your fingers. You can use rubber gloves. There's still a bit of a shortage. Rubber gloves are now like nitrate gloves are like 3 times the cost they used to be pre-COVID. O-ring is off, so we're going to do a cleanup. This goes in there, and the other thing we want to do as part of this, as I'm cleaning this up, is we're also going to inspect inside. So there's going to be some residual oil. I'll give you a little peek here. If you haven't done this before. There we go. So essentially you're just looking to see if there's anything out of place, any debris, bits of metal or anything like that, which would indicate an engine problem. And this one, other than the dirty oil, looks fine. So we're going to take a clean shop rag and we're going to clean it out. But you know, you don't have to get too worried. You don't want to get contaminants inside. But a little wipeout is fine. Just use a shop towel, lint-free style shop towel, and if you're going to clean it out. Next up, before we install the oil filter, what we want to do is put the new O-ring onto the cover. And to do that, we want some clean oil. So I've just opened one of the bottles of oil. Just a top tip. Most oil bottles have a foil cap on the top. Be very careful not to get any of that foil inside the oil or inside the engine, as a small piece of foil like that could actually interfere with the operation of the oil pump, which could starve or spin a bearing. Could be a very expensive mistake, so be very careful. All right, so just a little oil on the finger, and get the O-ring. Set this on the cover. Get it on. Make sure it's in the right spot. So here, kind of looks like it's on, but it's not in the right place. So this is where we want to make sure that we get it in the correct groove. There we go. Just chase it around there, and now it's in the right groove. Just another little dab of oil. And so we want to put oil on it so that it doesn't bind against the outer surface or tear or something like that. So the oil just lets it slide, and then you know you'll get a good seal. Next up is there's a little O-ring on the on this for the drain, which closes the drain. And we want to do the same thing, a little bit of clean oil on there. And then now we're ready to put this in. So inside the housing there's a hole on one side. I think you may have seen that when I showed you. I'm going to show you the install here. You take the oil filter where the valve and the seal is, and you look down inside and you can see the hole. You just line up the pin so that it goes in the hole. Push it down and it will just sit in there, and now it's ready to go. Then you take the cover, add the cover on, spin it into place. Just a little pushing and lining, and then it'll start to thread. The O-ring will get in, start making contact. It'll get a little stiffer, and then this is where you put the socket back on. Tighten this down. There is a torque setting for this. It bottoms out pretty easy. Keep in mind, the O-ring makes the seal, not how tight it is. Making it tighter doesn't make it seal any better. You just don't want it to come loose. So it's just a little pull. That's it. So no caveman pulling on plastic parts. I think that's important. So that's the preliminary part of the top, because the filter's done. We haven't even put the car in the air yet. So and don't start the car now, because you're just going to get that filter dirty. We're going to put the car up in the air and drain the oil. course, is take off the pan. In this case, you need more flavor. So, come here, go under, crazy, but it uses it. You use it. What is it? Bring it. Everyone's standing on this one. And okay, so there's a couple of slides here. Look at those. Probably leave one second there, and those leave. Letting down under the first thing on the one. Straight out, and then that's not made up front. And of course, everybody's just going this support. Remember, so just a more pulse. No, that's one. Got it. There's that up here. Now, I'm doing something different. Normally what I do is I replace the drain plug pardon me, and crush washer every time. They come as a set from Volkswagen. They're close to $10. Yeah, I know. So I usually do that every time, but this time I'm not. So what I'm going to be doing is making a mark on the plug and on the pan, and so that I have this lined up. And the reason why I'm doing that is to give me some feedback on the crush of the washer. Okay, so as you probably noticed, I have my safety glasses on in my hat. Anytime you get underneath the car and open up fluids, you want to protect yourself. I've got my nitrate oil gloves, gloves, and a tool. Now you've got to remember, this is 8 quarts. Make sure your receiving containers has enough volume. The other thing is that you may hear people say to take off the fill cover for your oil cap to allow air to flow in so it flows out faster. Well, that's fine if you have a receiver that can take oil quickly, but because this is a funnel and hole and there's no separate vent for it, sometimes it can get overwhelmed if it comes too fast. And when you've got 8 quarts of oil coming out, you know, it's not something you want to overflow. I seem to have enough with, there we go. So I personally do not like this design because I find that there's no way, come on, wonderful, no way of getting this out without making an absolute mess of the tool, because it comes straight down. It's not like the ones that are on the side. And there we go. Nobody knows anything at all. Simply it goes. I'm going to find someone now. Not feel like it. All right, so we've given there are lots of time to drain. Make sure there's no dirt around the hole. And here we go. So, as I say, normally it is normal practice to replace this, but I'm going to reuse it. And I'm going to show you my method. I normally just replace it, but we're going to go with the reuse this time. Get it in there finger tight. Get the rag. Give it a good clean up. And I can see my mark about 90 degrees off from where I was. So I've set my torque wrench to the required 22 foot-pounds, which is 264 inch-pounds, and I'm bringing this back to where it was. And this is where it's important. is there's the marks and they're lined up. So this is where the drain plug was torqued to previously. So as you crush a washer and the heat cycles and so on, the thickness will get thinner and the torque should fall. So now to get it to the required torque, I'm going to have to turn it beyond. And there we go. So what that's done is the new mark is now over there, probably about 60 degrees beyond where it was. So that means that the original crush washer is now crushed some more, and now I'm confident that this is not going to leak. Obviously you need to be confident. If you're not confident reusing it, please use a new one, because the consequences are you may lose 8 liters of oil. If you have to take it off to replace it afterwards, you lose all the oil. And you know, it's like $100 worth of oil. So not something you want to do without knowing your consequences. So we're torqued, we should be good. Time to fill her up with oil. A trusty rate, just in case I tend to spill, which seems to be my theme. There we go. I'm not going to show you all 8 going in, although I may show you a few, but the way I do this generally is not overfill, but I will put 7 or 7.5 in, start the engine, and then put the last one in, sort of start checking the level, get the computer. In this case there's no dipstick on this car. I haven't done the conversion yet, although I have been thinking about it, because the tube is right here. And I just have to buy the dipstick and stick it in, so it would be really nice actually to have the dipstick, not so much for the oil level because the computer inside the car can tell me, but is to look at the condition of the oil. So anyway, that's something I may do. Very simple. This is the tube. There's a plug. You pull the plug out. You put your dipstick in. Just have to buy a dipstick. Simple. Anyway, let's get the other ones in. And number 8. And hold right there. Alright, so I've now checked underneath to make sure there's no leaking. We've checked the oil filter housing, there's no leaking, so we're good there. I had the car up for that, and then I installed the skid plates or pans, whatever you want to call them, that go underneath the car, the lower engine protection. So those are installed now, and I've lowered the car. And now we're just going to check the oil level. Now, if you recall, I've put just a little over 7 quarts of oil in, so I know it's going to need more. I just wanted to see where we were, so let's go take a look. All right, so now we're in the car, so we'll switch to the setting that says car. Oh, and just so that you know, what I've done is not put my foot on the brake, put the ignition on by pressing the start button, and now we've got this display up for the car. We go to service, and then it'll show the oil level. Now you can see that it's just above minimum. This makes sense because I've put just over 7 quarts in versus the 8 that it requires. And you can see that it's actually 11 days, not 4 days, 11 days overdue. So I'm going to top up the put the rest of the oil in, and because it looks like it's going to take the whole thing, and then we'll check, and then we'll reset the service. All right. So yeah, I've reserved a little bit more. The oil hasn't probably gotten all the way down to the crankcase, hence why the level's not all the way up. But so I have another 1/10 of a quart to put in. I'm going to put that in, and I think we're going to be good. So now that that's done, I won't show you that. So are you sure you want to set? Yes, reset. The interval service was set, so now it shows that it's due in 15,000 kilometers or 365 days. I don't recommend 15,000 kilometers unless it's all highway. If you're 50-50 or whatever, 10,000 kilometers or 7,500 kilometers is a good interval for these engines. And the reason the reason why we do that is not because of bearings or cylinders or whatever. It's for the chain drive and other accessories, camshafts, tappets, whatever. These are all the what I call the other oiled parts in the engine, which don't take too favorably to long drain intervals. So by shortening the drain intervals and making sure that you stay on top of your oil changes will ensure a long life, because once you get into doing a chain or whatever on these cars, it gets very expensive. So, and if it's not quite a DIY, I might do it, but it's going to be a lot of work. I'm hoping not to have to do that on this engine ever. So anyway, that kind of wraps up the oil change service for this car. So I do have a whole bunch more to do. Differentials, transfer case fluid, coolant, brake fluid, all of that is due this year. So I'll shoot them one at a time, so it'll kind of come out in dribbles, but you'll see it. And I want to again thank you for watching Gary's Garage. I appreciate your guys' support, and for those that have been subscribing, if you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe. Maybe I can get a better oil catch container if I ever start getting money from YouTube. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. Have a good day.